You're listening to Creep Geeks Podcast. So it begins again. Welcome to Creep Geeks Podcast, episode 300.
FooFighters, World War II, Amelia Earhart, D.B. Cooper, Binaural Beats Experience, and Zombie Brain Chips.
That's right. Welcome to Season 7, Episode 300. Well, anyway, I was going to fade out and make, Anyway, I'm Greg.
I'm Omi.
And we're going to roll into it because we have lots of interesting things we like to talk about on the old Creep Geeks Podcast. And you can say the Creep Geeks Podcast or Creep Geeks Podcast. It's the same thing.
Okay.
So I don't know about the singular, plural, or whatever all that stuff is. That stuff's trash, man. That's just as bad as algebra.
Okay.
School's garbage. Have you seen some of these school math things where it's like, okay, I don't know. Let's work this problem 17 layers deep when the answer is immediate and right there.
Yeah.
Like that's supposed to give us a better, different way of thinking. And so this cheesy intro is going to tie into the binaural beats and stuff like that. Oh. It all goes together. Now, granted, the link or the string, the thread that puts them all together is pretty freaking thin. Just saying. But it is what it is. All right, so anyway, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you. If you'd like to communicate with us in any way, there's a couple different ways. So you can't just do it out of the blue. You might have to pick your poison.
Yeah.
You can use the phone.
That phone number is going to be 575-208-4025.
That's right. Toll-free number. I don't even think that matters anymore.
Yeah.
Is that a toll-free number? I haven't been asked that in 20 years. But nobody cares.
You can also hit us up on our website, creepgeeks.com, and click on the Contact Us link, or reach out on social media. We have a fairly active Facebook group. Be sure to join us on that Facebook group or any of the major social media platforms. We do have a presence. You can reach us there.
Yep. If you want to hear us on Spotify or iHeartRadio or anything like that, we're there as well. Yep. So, yeah, if you think that's impressive, don't.
And it's easy. Creep Geeks Podcast or Creep Geeks Pod. You'll find us. You can
search.
Yeah.
And if you're there and you want to give us an amazing 5-star review, we'll gladly take it. We accept only the finest 3 to 5-star reviews. I've dropped it by a star because it's 2024 and it's starting out weird.
Yeah. Our expectations are a little more realistic these days.
Yes. And I think people's expectations of us are realistic too. It is what it is. So. All right, so we like to talk about a couple different things, and we like to talk about things that we find to be interesting on the internet, and that includes news and some experiences that we've had and that sort of thing. And sometimes I come across stuff that doesn't really fit into the paranormal, but it can apply. And this is sort of a concept of the day. A lot of times we used to do term of the day and all that. That got boring, so we stopped doing that.
Yeah.
But this is sort of a concept of the day, and this is called the illusory truth effect.
Yes, so the illusory truth effect, also known as the illusion of truth effect or validity effect or reiteration effect, is the tendency to believe false information to be correct after repeated exposure. So it was first identified in 1977 during a study. When the truth is assessed, people rely on whether the information is in line with their understanding, or if it feels familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first condition is logical, as people compare new information with what they already know to be true. Repetition makes statements easier to process relative to new, unrepeated statements, leading people to believe that the repeated conclusion is more truthful. The illusory truth effect has also been linked to hindsight bias, in which the recollection of confidence is skewed after the truth has been received.
Yes.
Now,
so
to break that down, basically, if something is repeated often enough, humans will just accept that as fact or as the truth as they are aware of it.
Yes.
Then when presented with an actual truth or valid situation that parallels that, they're not so prone to accept it?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is kind of one of those things where if you're listening and you're mad, you're wrong. So that's kind of why I put this in here, right? Because let's say, for example, you believe all the conspiracies around Corona.
Okay.
Right? And then you have people that believe everything in the news about Corona was true, and that if you believe the conspiracies, then you're the problem. Well, both don't like it, right? And so they're both pointing at each other. But the same could be said for either one of them with this illusionary truth thing. So the more you hear stuff, the more you have a tendency to believe it. So whether that's true, whether the statement is actually real or not, if you hear it enough, you may or may not believe it. And so you're fighting at odds with each other, regardless of the viewpoint that you have.
And it's because of your repeated or conditioned exposure to the statements that you did hold true.
Right.
So whether, you were tinfoil hat or conspiracy, and you were already conditioned to question what was being presented to you, or if you fell into the camp of genuine concern about Corona and you had that repetition of what you felt you were being exposed to as being valid, same thing.
Yeah. So there's no winning.
There is no winning.
And this is also like when you see the clips where they'll have like a news commentator saying like, Taylor Swift was at a concert. And then the next one pops up, Taylor Swift was at a concert. Taylor Swift. And there's like 1,000 of them all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Sort of lends itself to this illusionary effect.
So how would this lend itself to the paranormal?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. If you hear the same thing over and over and over again, even if it hasn't been proven or if it's not founded in fact or for anything like that, you're going to believe it. And then if somebody believes different than you, because they're like, I looked into that myself and that wasn't the case that I've experienced, then they're wrong.
Okay.
And then even if they say, hey, come with me and I'll show you, and then you see it firsthand, you get mad about it. You're like, whatever, man, I still don't believe you because everybody in the world and every time I've seen this, and I've seen this so many times, that it obviously is not correct and you're stupid, right? I mean, I'm being really general because I can't really think of any real specific, instances to bring it out there because I can't. Because there is not one thing in the paranormal that somebody says, this is absolutely the way it is, and it's been regurgitated a million times in a million different ways. Nobody can say that. You can't say that about Bigfoot, because we still don't know if Bigfoot exists. You can't say that about ghosts, because we still don't know if ghosts exist. You can't say it about UFOs, because we still don't know if UFOs actually exist, and aliens and green men, or goblins or monsters. You can't say that about anything in the paranormal.
So
the only thing you can say in the paranormal that I can think of off the top of my head is that a lot of times it has an effect on your brain. Like having experiences can show up with brain scans.
Yeah.
But then again, a scientifically minded person who maybe works in the mental health industry goes, yeah.
That's called trauma.
We look at that and say, oh, that's trauma, or it's psychosomatic due to trauma, or it's trauma, or whatever.
Yeah.
So nobody can really, we can't say it. So the entire point of this whole thing is that don't believe everything you hear, even if you hear it from a million people. If it seems off to you, it probably is. Because there's a third group of people that sits back and looks at both sides of what they're seeing and hearing and tries to do some research themselves and tries to talk about it. But a lot of times they don't, because who are they going to tell? You tell the one side saying one thing, or if you tell the other side saying the other thing, and you get ganged up on.
And that relates to something called processing fluency. Apparently, this Wikipedia talks about a 2015 study where researchers discovered that familiarity can overpower rationality, and that repetitively hearing a certain statement is wrong can paradoxically cause it to feel right. So,
yes,
researchers attributed the illusory truth effect's impact even on participants who knew the correct answer to begin with, but were persuaded to believe otherwise through the repetition of a falsehood. And that's due to processing fluency. So how fluent you are at processing all these different facts or different presentations.
See, I wonder how much like rage doesn't get factored into this, because there are people that if you tell them the same thing over and over and over again, they just go to sort of a rage thing and say, you know what, I'm not watching Breaking Bad. I don't care if you say it's good or not.
Or just shut down. Because there's rage or shut. Like if I am repetitively exposed to opinions for certain things, I just shut it down. I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to close off myself from this conversation because no. you know?
Yeah. And that leads to a really boring podcast when
Yes,
you do
it
that.
does.
Like, oh, really? Okay. So anyway, I want to put that in there because if it makes you mad, you're wrong. There's no winning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a couple of things.
Well, I've seen
paranormal.
instances like with people making comments and things like Reddit and YouTube and everything else saying, oh, well, this is really what it is. And you're dumb for thinking otherwise.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you can't prove it. Where did you get your information from? You can't prove it either. No one can prove it.
Well, okay, so like due to marketing, my opinion of security cameras, now you capture everything. Well, that's been repeated over and over in marketing, like these, you know, security cams that go on like front doors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So now everybody, because you can capture everything, everybody's like, oh, I can capture everything and the paranormal.
Yeah. And what they're not factoring in is the garbage factor.
The garbage factor, or just common sense, like, you know, you're going to capture everything, including bugs and dust. Or, you know, there is a vent right next to that, and it's your AC or your heater blowing out stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Or your
and-
camera is not physically capable of providing you a clear image.
Yeah.
So the stuff that you're seeing is trash.
And it was misguided marketing, you know, deliberate. I mean, those cameras don't capture everything. They capture X frames per minute.
Well, they rely on,
You know,
and that advertising relies on people not being smart enough. I shouldn't say smart enough. But people not being enthusiastic about it, the product, enough to go do some research. Yeah. Or they don't have enough background to know that, you know, when you try to say that an image that's 538 pixels by 648 pixels is high definition. No, it's not. Not even close. Doesn't match the standard. So these hidden details and specifications for things, people don't pay attention to, or they don't know them.
and see, that's part of
And
it.
it can lead to it.
They don't know that. What the average populace knows is what's been drilled into their head, whether it's security cameras or EVP recording devices. It's what's been drilled in their head about it.
Yeah, don't get me started with that. You know,
Yeah.
well, you want to use one that's not really good quality. That way you'll let everything through.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the reason why people were using these really bad audio recorders back in the day is that's what they had.
Yes.
So you're telling me that if I play a bunch of trash and listen to it long enough, I can hear something, or I can make it think,
Yeah.
or I can make it to myself in my own little head that, yeah, I think I heard that.
Yeah.
Whereas I would like a better audio recorder that has better quality. And even if the frequency range is slightly different, because that way when I hear somebody go, I'm cold,
Yeah.
it sends goosebumps up my spine instead of hearing. It's like, wow, you have a really shitty microphone built into that audio recorder.
Yeah.
And there's an argument too where you want omnidirectional so you can capture the sound from everywhere. That's great.
Really?
Do you really want omnidirectional? Because that way you can hear everything. You can hear my stomach gurgling. You can hear the shuffling of your denim jeans. I mean, you can hear everything.
Yeah.
And I understand why you'd want something like that. So if you're going to get a device that has omnidirectional capability or microphone, get one that's decent quality.
Yeah.
Because if you hear a bunch of trash and you can make out something that you want to hear out of the trash, it's still trash.
Or as any photographer or sound engineer will tell you, whether it's photos or audio, trash in is trash out.
It's called GIGO.
Yeah.
Garbage in
Garbage in
is garbage out. That's for anything, like electronics, like when you're putting signals and waveforms and looking at waveforms and all. Anyway, it is what it is. So I thought that was something kind of neat to talk about. And, yeah, especially when you see the same thing regurgitated over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, and I don't know what it's called when you see something over and over and over again, and you instinctively go, I don't believe you.
I've got
Now I think you're trying to pull the okey doke on me.
I
Now I have a distrust.
an example, and it applies to like my generation and the next couple of generations, the younger folk. Every time we see Nessie, it's a flippered dinosaur. But the original cases started with like
A radiator hose sticking out of the water.
a radiator hose or a hippopotamus foot, a taxidermied hippopotamus foot,
Yes.
instead of flippers.
Yep.
So there's one, but it's been drilled into my head. So if I were to try to show somebody a Nessie picture, the younger generation may be like, psh, Nessie's got flippers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good example of it.
Well, it's an example.
Well, yeah. Okay, fine.
See, it's all good. So anyway, we need to talk about FooFighters.
We need to.
Yeah, we do because when I was a kid growing up, World War II wasn't that far away.
Okay.
I was born in 1970, right? World War II, like I said, was not that far away. There was a lot of stuff on television, all that stuff. But anyway, I knew what FooFighters were, or the idea of what FooFighters were growing up. And then over time, it sort of shifted and changed or whatever, where nobody really knows what these FooFighters are. Do you know what FooFighters are? Can you explain them in a way that makes sense?
No, because I have to start my free trial on this article.
If only you had an ad blocker. Man, that would be great. So basically, FooFighters were these fireballs or bright colored balls that would fly around like aircraft in the sky. Like the planes, right? They're flying fortresses and flying bombers flying through the air. And they would see these big spheres of light flying around or small spheres of light. Sometimes they would come in and circle around and do all this crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to call them. They called them FooFighters. And a lot of times they would equate seeing the FooFighters to somebody having bad luck in the squadron or formation as they're flying. And these things had bad luck anyway. They were all usually shot at all the time. They weren't necessarily the most precisionally built aircraft because they were pumping these things out because the war effort was huge. I don't think a lot of people understand how big World War II was. Yeah. Especially for an industrial country that we really became. Yeah. Where they're putting out like thousands of fighters and jets and fighters and planes and stuff like that a month. So anyway, so it was a thing, right? It's kind of one of those lore, like legends and lore thing, and then it sort of turned into people talking about it, and then, it's a gremlin, it's electrical gremlin, it's sort of in the same vein as that. Mm-hmm. Whereas when some of the GIs got back to the States after fighting in World War II, they hang little silver bells off their Harleys as they rode around their motorcycles because the ringing of the bell keeps the gremlins away. Yeah. Same thing with aircraft, did the same thing, and it was always sort of... But anyway, nobody really knows what FooFighters are.
It was a nonsense word. Foo emerged in popular culture during the early 1930s, first used by cartoonist Bill Holman, who peppered his Smokey Stover fireman cartoon strips with foo signs and puns. And it was borrowed from that cartoon by a radio operator in the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, basically to describe these Foo Fighters or these phenomena that they were seeing. Foo
Fighters. Yeah. So the problem with Foo Fighters is that any idea that you have behind them, you can't prove. Okay. You can't prove if it's true or not. And this sort of loosely relates to what we talked about with Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina. Yeah. Because the article that we put a link to, because everything we talk about in the show notes is linked in the show notes with all the links that you can go look at yourself. It sort of alludes to the fact that they think that Foo Fighters are actually plasma balls. Like, it's plasma balls, guys. I've heard that like 10 years ago. So it's not like it's a new thing. So I don't understand why it's coming back, but I wanted to kind of put it in there so we could talk about it. And we've heard the same thing with Brown Mountain Lights. Yeah. It's plasma balls. Plasma balls can appear to be alive, so they mimic weird. And so you would think that it's more of a naturalistic thing instead of some unnatural thing.
The
ball of plasma.
Piezoelectric phenomenon that happens with quartz crystals. What do you call that? Piezoelectric?
Yeah, close enough. It's basically, energy. So it's light, right? Light energy.
But they are trying to say in some of these more recent articles, it's an electrostatic phenomenon similar to St. Elmo's fire, or simple reflections of light from ice crystals that were dropping from the plains. Yeah.
And herein goes back to, let's look at something where a farmer who's lived on the land for his generations, third generation, been there 100 years, right? Has worked the land, has seen possums, gophers, and owls, says he's seen something weird, and then all of a sudden some dude from New York, right, a scientist from New York, say, no, you didn't see that country guy who sees animals like this every single day. What you seen was a big bird, right? Yeah. You didn't see Mothman or a giant owl. What you seen was a heron. It's like, oh, thanks for clearing that up. You think these guys that flew these planes who had to wear winter gear every time they went up because it was so cold, didn't know the difference between seeing reflections of ice crystals and a round ball flying around doing all sorts of crazy movements and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. That's like, it's just, I think it's an easy explanation that I don't think it's necessarily true. I don't know when it comes to Foo Fighters. But when we seen the Brown Mountain Lights and I seen them, it didn't look like some, piezoelectric spark or even a ball of plasma whizzing around. I mean,
mountain peak disruption.
Yeah, it's
especially because
that's not what I'm seeing.
Peak disruption is supposed to happen at peaks, and we've actually seen it once or twice in New Mexico.
Yeah, I've seen it coming out of gullies and stuff, and weird. So I don't know. So I thought that was kind of interesting to stick in there.
Foo Fighters.
Like that. Guess who that is?
Who is
Foo Fighters.
I'll play with
Foo Fighters.
That's Christopher Walken.
Of course it is.
Because every time I hear Foo Fighters, this is what I think of. Because he introduced Foo Fighters.
Oh, gosh.
The rock band Foo Fighters with Dave Grohl and those guys on Saturday Night Live. And the story goes, Dave Grohl was telling a story where Christopher Walken came up to him and basically asked him, what the emphasis was on how to say Foo Fighters.
Okay.
And they knew Christopher Walken and how he is. Everybody knows his unique, vocal patterns and the way he talks, right?
Yeah.
And it said, it's emphasis on fighters. So when he went in there, he's like, okay, guys.
Foo Fighters.
He says it like that, right? But here's what Dave Grohl says, how it sounded when he introduced him to play on Saturday Night Live when they were doing their first song or whatever.
Foo Fighters.
So because it sounds crazy when you put the emphasis on fighters and not the Foo part. Yeah. So, hey, guys, welcome.
Foo Fighters.
So anyway, there you go.
Okay.
So probably just get banned from
the internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway, speaking of Foo Fighters and what they're now thought to be, since the university experts are saying that, hey, it's really plasma balls, right? And then they bring up instances, of course, of like during the early space program where they seen like large plasma fields that occur with ionization and things like that. And how it can basically off-gas and create little bubbles and things. And so, I mean, sure, it's a viable explanation. Is it really what it is? I don't know. And there really hasn't been too many Foo Fighter footages captured on film back in the day, because we're talking, coming up on 80 years ago. More than that. And I guess it would depend when it's recorded. But speaking about 87 years ago.
This is over that.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty close. Anyway, Amelia Earhart's plane 1937 is when it went missing, along with her in it and her co-pilot Noonan. They were basically trying to break a record, right?
87 years. Okay.
Yeah.
You're
So
right.
they were trying to break a record, and I don't even know. Here's the thing about it is I don't even know what record they were trying to do, transatlantic flight or whatever it was. I just know that they disappeared, and of course Amelia Earhart disappeared. A lot of people don't even know that she had a co-pilot. You can't just fly solo like that.
Yeah.
So she disappeared, basically. She radioed in a couple times and disappeared. It's been a mystery ever since, and there's been expeditions and groups trying to go out and find out what happened to Amelia Earhart, because it is one of our major mysteries of our country.
Yeah.
And there's a company that thinks they may have found her plane.
Wow.
Like in deep water, and they're using advanced sonar, and they want to put an ending to the Amelia Earhart. They want to know, because there's been sort of different ideas that she was captured by the Japanese, or that her and her co-pilot Noonan, they wound up on a desert island and died there because nobody came and got them, and they found human skeletal remains.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a.
Well, they allegedly sent those skeletal remains off to be looked at, and they got disposed of or something. Nothing really came from it. Another one is that they were eaten by coconut crabs.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And so they don't really know. And there was a theory that I'm not sure if it actually lines with this current theory, which is that they found the plane underwater, like about 3,000 feet down or something like that. I can't remember if it's feet or fathoms for this, but was that the plane was coming into land and it didn't quite make it and got stuck on a reef.
Huh.
And so at high tide, the plane would be partially submerged, not submerged enough to, to cause it to have like electrical problems. But when the low tide would occur, that she would go out to the plane and use the radio to transmit their location the best they knew it to try to ask for help.
Yeah.
And so what she would have to do is she'd have to turn the motor over to crank it, because once the engines are firing up, then the batteries are charging so that she could transmit.
Okay.
And it would happen during low tide, because that way she could get out there, because her co-pilot Noonan allegedly had leg injury, because this was reported. She made this report.
Yeah.
So, and the exact name of the island, I have to bring the link up. I can't remember.
Was it Howell?
I think so.
Howland Island.
Yeah,
was
that
their
sounds right.
intended destination.
Right, and this was a smaller island.
Okay. Their last known position report was near the Nukumanu Islands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this current mission to find out, I shouldn't call it a mission, this current expedition to try to find out what happened to Amelia Earhart and leading to the idea that they found her plane is done by this company. And they went out, and like I said, they're using, high-tech sonar to try to figure out what's going on. And they zeroed in on an area of the Pacific Ocean where they think that the plane went down, which is like you're saying, it's off the coast of Howell Island.
Yeah. So it's somewhere between Howell Island and Leh. So it could have been anywhere from like the Millie Atoll or all these tiny little dots that are in there in the Pacific Ocean, basically.
Yeah.
Between those two spots.
Now, they're saying that since there's no other known crashes in that area and that the sonar image looks like I think it's the B-29.
Yeah.
That it's a pretty high likelihood that it would be her plane. Which would make sense, because why would you have a B-29 there?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just know that so far they spent like $11 million to try to solve this mystery. Yeah. And we do have a link to all that stuff in the show notes where you can actually go look at the pictures. And if you don't know too much about sonar, you're looking at the pictures going, well, that's just a blob.
Yeah.
But it's not. It kind of, if you kind of look at it and start maybe trying to see the differences and the similarities between the plane's shape and what could be the shape of an aircraft sitting on basically a flat, sandy ocean bottom about 3,000 feet deep, and you can kind of put two and two together and go, yeah, that looks like that would be a B-29. Because the B-29's rear, whatever you call it, ailerons, the thing that sticks in the back. You have the front wing, and then you have the thing that's like the rudder and all that stuff. Yeah. I'm not a plane guy. It's very distinct, and that's one of the things they're using to determine that. So they're not ready to declare that it is for sure her plane. But they're going to go back and look and take a much deeper look, because it's pretty deep water. I thought it was kind of a neat thing. So I want the mystery to be solved, but I kind of don't.
Yeah.
Because once the mystery is solved, do you even care anymore?
A little.
I mean, yeah, a little bit. People were arguing in the comments because I started looking into it and said, okay, and I found some video clips and things like that to kind of check out. And then people were in the comments complaining the reason why she wasn't rescued or found was that she was a woman. And how dare a woman try to do something a man would? So they made it into this thing. It's like the reason why she wasn't found is because it was 87 years ago. Yeah. I mean, you're using radio. And also, here's something to consider, too, for people that actually think that way. If you're listening to the podcast, say, well, they didn't find her because she was a girl, and we didn't want a girl to succeed or whatever. It's BS. Amelia Earhart was just as famous, if not more famous, than Charles Lindbergh.
Yeah.
We have, like, people that became, let's just call them pop culture or pop icons. Yeah. Charles Lindbergh was one of them. Yeah. Amelia Earhart, for sure, was another. Yeah. Unfortunately, Lindbergh baby was a thing. So it's like, and how could you freaking say that? If they wanted to find her, she was like America's sweetheart. She was flying across, and and nobody cares about Noonan. He's not even a sidekick for. Yeah. But the whole thing is like, how can you freaking say that? And it's like, it just aggravated me. I'm like, I grew up thinking Amelia Earhart was legendary, man. I'm like, whoa. Because there was a legend behind it. Something happened. She's lost. No, because it was, you know what? Because of In Search Of. Yeah. with Leonard Nimoy. I'm like, wow.
So she had the Distinguished Flying Cross,
Yeah.
the Legion d'Honneur,
What?
Legion d'Honneur. I can't do French, y'all. National Aviation Hall of Fame, National Women's Hall of Fame, first solo across the Atlantic Ocean, first woman to fly
exactly.
solo.
She is a rock star.
Also did the one she got lost on. It wasn't like around the globe. It was circumnavigational globe. So she had to hit down, up and down across the globe. She couldn't just fly straight across. This particular flight pattern was very unique and a really big deal. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. My thing is, if you're really interested in all the theories, go to the Wikipedia because it covers almost all of them. Anywhere from her becoming Tokyo Rose.
Yeah, I heard that one too.
To the Gardner Island, to like you were saying earlier, the captured by the Japanese.
Yeah.
Deliberate crash and sink. Starting a new identity. Spies for FDR.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. That one is slightly more credible than being captured by the Japanese.
Another theory was that she decided to turn back mid-flight and then reach Papua New Guinea and become a citizen of New Britain.
Yeah, I don't think that one's true because she broadcast. There's documentation of radio broadcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they tried to use triangulation to sort of figure out whereabouts she would be. So that stuff's been recorded. I mean, that's part of it. That's part of the mystery. She's gone. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And of course stories keep popping up. Just like this one with DB Cooper. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, people are really interested in DB Cooper. I'm not. I know you are. I'm not. It's just, you know why?
Why?
Amelia Earhart. To me, that's like one of those things. She could have been flown off and, taken by aliens.
Okay.
Could have, had a Bermuda Triangle effect because I put all that stuff in the same category, right? Bermuda Triangle. You fly out, you just disappeared. You sail out, you just disappear. Amelia Earhart just disappeared. Right?
Yeah.
And the more modern one is like flight MH370 just disappeared. Remember that?
No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of, but DB Cooper stole a bunch of money and then disappeared.
But, okay, I can't find the link about the DNA.
It's in there. Okay, so the links that we have in there, one of them takes you to the Sun UK. Or no, Sun America, which is, and DB Cooper's identity will likely be revealed after bombshell DNA breakthrough from hijackers tie in 53-year-old mystery. Do you have the link?
So the link, why does it link to something else? No, I don't have. What I don't have is victimless crime. That link.
Okay, so the victimless crime thing is that people that were on the plane that experienced, the hijacking and opening of the door and jumping out and all that stuff caused people trauma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's 53 years old. Let it go. I mean, so the FBI has not been able to really figure out what's going on. They have ideas and stuff. We've watched a couple shows on DB Cooper and all that stuff, but they really don't have anything that can definitively say this is DB Cooper.
Yeah.
Let it go. I mean, just stop. Right? Are they just trying to prove something? Or they're not going to get the money back. What money there was. And so this article basically brings out a little bit of details of how they're going to use DNA to try to figure out. And this is from his tie, all sorts of crazy things like a giant leap forward has been made in the hunt to unmask DB Cooper after an independent investigator probing his infamous, basically unsolved skyjacking has obtained the crook's DNA from a tie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to use 0.8 microns of whatever is on this tie to try to figure out DB Cooper's identity. So, and this is the same because we talked about this I think is the same kind of DNA testing they did to try to say that it's a higher likelihood that the Loch Ness Monster that you bring up is actually an eel because there's a high preponderance of eel poop and eel stuff in the water. And so since there's more eel stuff in the water, chances are that Loch Ness Monster, if there was one at all, would be an eel. So this guy, Eric Ellis, who's been investigating Cooper case for 13 years, exclusively revealed to the U.S. Sun on Monday that the criminal's days of anonymity are now numbered. They said this like 10 years ago when we watched that special, right?
Yeah.
So, Tom Kay is a scientist that Ellis basically met and tested D.B. Cooper's tie in 2009 and 2011 with a special device that captures particulates in a filter.
Okay.
And so they were trying to analyze the tie for traces of certain metals and things like that to help try to sort of figure out who D.B. Cooper is.
Yeah.
And so they're saying that, if we're going to take this and bring it to our state of the art lab, and we're going to look at our metagenomic DNA analysis, and we're going to take all this stuff, and we'll be able to say things like, did he own a dog? How many kids does he have? All this stuff. I'm like, how? Okay.
And see, that's the thing that throws me, because that metagenomic DNA process that was used for Nessie, the way it was used was they collected samples of the Loch Ness, and those samples were filtered down, like, using scientific filtering processes, okay, this is eel poop, this is sturgeon poop, this is dying kelp or seaweed, and everything got, pushed away into these categories and separated so they could be identified through scientific process. Because it was a loch, it's a lake, so that stuff can easily be sorted. This tie went through not carjacking, an airjacking.
Yeah.
He jumped from a plane.
Numerous hands.
Landed in the wilderness somewhere.
Yeah, because this testing is like, before you bought the tie, if somebody was in the store, like, let me feel the quality of that. It's a velvet, let me feel that. Right. That's on there. Because they're saying it's critically important because let's say you have a dozen different DNA profiles on that tie from everyone who has come into contact with that tie over the years, including various FBI agents and Cooper himself. We will be able to separate all those strands individually. While we won't know which one is Cooper's, we'll be able to gradually narrow them down.
Which can take forever. Because
it's already, we've already rocking 53 years of this stuff. So
that Loch Ness study took years before we finally got to talk about it. Because we talked about when it started, and then we talked about its results.
4 years later.
Yeah.
If D.B. Cooper had any kids, for example, those children would likely be on that tie as well. So if any of those dozen or so profiles on the tie are related, they'll most likely be Cooper's.
Okay.
And I'm not an expert on this stuff by any means because just not. But to me, this reminds me of this is like the epidemiology of DNA studies. It's like a study of coincidence, right?
Yeah.
If you say it to an epidemiologist, they get all mad about it. But it's kind of like, okay, you have a trailer park and you have a bunch of high-powered tension wires and stuff, and the trailer park's underneath the wires, and kids are coming out with issues. Mm-hmm. Well, chances are it's probably those high-tension wires. Can't prove it for sure. It's sort of like, well, coincidentally, yeah. We don't need the FBI, is what the dude's saying, all this, right?
Yeah.
He sued the FBI for access to Cooper's tie and for additional testing last year, but his case was thrown out by a federal judge in December. Because the tie has been tested twice for DNA with little success. While insisting that he no longer needs the FBI's help to crack the case, Ellis is still campaigning for access to Cooper's tie.
Yeah.
And he also wants to test a hidden spindle in the knot because he believes the investigators overlooked that. It's a clip-on tie, so it's got this little thing in there, and they're called a spindle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you don't want a real tie to get hung up on something because it'll kill you. It can strangle you. But a clip-on tie is breakaway tie. So if something weird happened or somebody grabbed the tie or whatever, it just pop off and off you go.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, just like our badges at work that they replaced one time. Remember we had these sweet badges and we're like, give me your lanyard. Because we had to have the breakaway lanyards in case, your lanyard got hung up in a desk drawer or something like that and you strangled yourself, So they gave us these cheesy breakaway lanyards.
Yeah. Like
we had ones that had cool like swag print on them and stuff like Canon, be the whatever. Like, and like here's a thin, cheesy Dollar Tree breakaway.
Like a cat lanyard. Collar, like we're really going to get trapped in something.
Well, I'm sure somebody in an office somewhere who doesn't do the job is like, that's really dangerous, guys. That's really dangerous. What if they shut the door on their lanyard and go to stand up and, whatever, man. So it's like, okay, so purely for litigation and, so I'm not sure about D.B. Cooper. I guess I'm just not that interested into it anymore. Not like I want to know what happened to Amelia Earhart.
Huh.
But I kind of don't want to know. I want it to be one of those enduring mysteries. Where you're like, yeah, that's crazy. Because if you know, that's like Bigfoot, right? If people know that Bigfoot's real,
Yeah.
for a while there's going to be an effort to go find Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Eventually, they're just not going to care anymore. So, or you hear about it all the time and you don't care anymore. Like I think the idea of UFOs and stuff like that is becoming so watered down that people just believe, but they don't care. And I actually put a link to an article that's a couple articles down that we were going to talk about. We'll talk about it right now since it makes sense. Survey finds that 1 out of 3 Americans believes aliens may already be here on Earth.
Oh, okay.
So it used to be the first part of this that we've seen was do Americans believe in UFOs? Right? And it became sure. We've seen it, heard about it so much. Yeah, we believe, right? And now, with this new survey, Americans' belief in aliens found that 1 out of every 3 participants suspect that otherworldly visitors may already be here on Earth. So, it doesn't really say a whole lot. It's just a poll that was done on basically talker research for this website called Wealth of Geeks, where they were asking the question. A staggering 37% answered yes, while 41% were skeptical about such a scenario, and 22% indicated that they were unsure.
There was that study back in 2019 basically saying that octopus or octopi may actually be aliens due to their DNA makeup. And I mean, that would be an example of an alien living on Earth right now.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they're thinking green men.
I know.
Look a little your typical, the more common, the grays or whatever. Yeah. So 42 of the participants endorsed current world leaders to speak on behalf should these visitors appear. They make themselves known. But then 42% also of the people expressed coincidence that they themselves could broker peace with the ETs. So you got 42% of the people going, yeah, I think we should let our government leaders do it. And then you got the other 42% says, no, it's basically 2023, right?
Yeah.
Just let me do it.
2024 now. Yeah.
Well, 2024, I'm talking about when it actually occurred,
Yeah.
when the survey occurred. Thank you very much. Don't correct me.
Anyways.
But the thing is that, before some
I'll
people have
send you
face.
out now to broker with the aliens.
Oh, yeah?
FooFighters.
That's right.
FooFighters.
Wow.
So here's the deal. That's where we're at. About half the country trusts the government.
Yeah.
The other half doesn't. So I'll just do it.
Well, considering the amount of bravado you and these Americans have.
It's
go
not
right
bravado.
ahead. That's what this article says.
Yeah, and that's where the article is wrong. Because, I mean, sure, there's bravado, but there's a hardcore group of people out there that'll do what it takes. Whatever it takes. And they won't do it as in, like, if I do this, people will think I'm cool. They're like, no, it's what I need to do. So, you may not be aware of this because your generation is not like that. My generation is definitely like that.
My generation writes books on why it's a bad idea
Foo-
for the
Foo-
government to try to broker
FooFighters.
anything with aliens.
That's not true.
FooFighters.
Yeah.
Counterculture was long before you guys made it cool, wasn't it?
My generation writes books and they actually get published on Amazon. So.
Yeah. Yeah, your generation brought Twilight.
No, actually, that's not me.
Well, whatever. My generation gave you heavy metal. That's all you need to know. What are you smirking at? Easy there, Ramstein. What is that called? You guys gave it little categories now. So anyway, a survey found that 1 out of 3 Americans believes that aliens may already be on Earth.
Oh, Twilight
42%
was written
said,
by a
"Let our-"
Gen Xer.
Oh, is that all you got, really?
Yep, Gen
Okay.
X.
Okay. And who were they? Were they cool?
I don't know.
No, they weren't.
I don't read Twilight.
Yeah.
So
You
there we
did.
go. No, I haven't.
Are you, was it Harry Potterite?
Nope.
Let me tighten up the mic stand. We're
Your
about to get
attitude.
into it. Speaking of attitude, let's go back into the podcast. Let's talk about some police action.
All right.
Yeah. Don't make me call the police. So I got that in a yearbook one time. Somebody signed my yearbook, said, don't call me, I'll call the cops. And then put their phone number. I'm like, was this a test? I don't even know who it was because they didn't sign it, but I just thought it was pretty funny. I don't even know what that yearbook is. Anyway, so this was unusual, so I want to put this in here because this is the first time I've heard of this, which doesn't mean it hasn't happened in the past. But so the police, you know, they have search warrants. Mm-hmm. Well, on one of these search warrants, when they were going to basically take the search warrant and put it into motion so they can do their thing, it lists searching for paranormal activity.
Wow.
So there was a murder case where there was an 87-year-old who was killed, and this is in Michigan, and this 87-year-old man who was allegedly killed by his 50-year-old daughter-in-law and his 20-year-old grandson. The two
are said to have made such outlandish claims
Yeah.
that the authorities included the phrase evidence of paranormal activity in their search warrant. So these two were recognized as suspects in the shooting. According to the court documents, the university student Jacob kept Mannon and his mom Margaret.
Don't say their names. Nobody needs to know.
They're each accused of one count of open murder and conspiracy to commit homicide in connection with the fatal shooting.
Yeah.
They allegedly killed this person before being taken into custody in Iowa. Okay, but where does it talk about the paranormal?
So Margaret and Jacob, we'll just do their first names, made absurd claims. They allegedly told the police, right, that her son basically killed the old man. Both suspects allegedly made a number of absurd claims about the events leading up to the shooting, right?
Yeah.
It's reported to have informed the authorities that upon reaching, they thought that the 87-year-old had already died due to evil spirits.
Oh.
And that the person inside was not Grandpa.
According to the search warrant, Jacob advised that the spirits stated Grandpa opened the well up behind the house and the spirits killed him.
Yeah.
And they also purportedly described him as not her father-in-law, asserting that he had been acting like a 20-year-old. Investigators even observed, according to the report, that the mother and son's accounts resembled the events in M. Night Shyamalan's film The Visit.
You mean Shyamalan?
Shyamalan, whatever. Yeah. So now I gotta go look that one up. The Visit. So that's kind of weird.
It's kind of a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what? So they put it in there so they could look for paranormal activity. And what if the cops find it? And it gets entered into evidence. Does that change things?
And that makes me curious because, like, okay, if they're saying he was already dead, but his body was possessed, which may be in line with this movie, The Visit, or traditional hoodoo voodoo type beliefs.
Little Pet Cemetery action almost.
Yeah, a combination of all three of those. If the coroner takes this dude's body and tries to figure out, okay, maybe he died on the 8th, and then...
Maybe he was shot on the 8th, but found the coroner finds out, wow, he's been dead for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would that make a difference?
So, yeah, they're not really saying. It says, as per the search warrant, any evidence of paranormal activity, spirits, possession of bodies, including but not limited to the movie. So they're looking for the movie, The Visit, which came out in 2015. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, they're not saying a lot. But that's something. That's kind of weird. That's kind of nutty, right?
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine, like, some of the... What if police decided to do something like this for, like, missing persons cases? Or, I don't know. I think it could be useful.
Do what?
You know...
Just go out and look for paranormal activity for missing persons? Then how does that work? We have... police and detectives that don't care enough about the Constitution and your rights to learn them. True. So how are they going to become paranormal experts?
That's true. So,
and it's just kind of a weird thing. But I mean, I think it's interesting. But at the same time, I don't want them just going after. This is like becomes sort of a minority report thought police thing. If they can add that to a warrant, who's to say they can't throw you in jail for thinking about stuff?
I know.
Looking at you, Canada. Canada's got issues.
I don't know. I think like, you know.
So I'm waiting for
how some places they actually.
Chris Barrett's gonna let me know.
Will invite like a psychic, you know.
Well, that does happen. They use those. I mean, we've seen enough shows and stuff like that where they can bring in a psychic or whatever. Yeah, because the cop shop has to be open to the idea.
Yeah.
Maybe beyond ridicule or whatever. But I've never heard of that. It's like, let's put this on paper. They'd be like going in there saying we need to find items of witchcraft or whatever. But they just did a broad. We're looking for things of paranormal activity.
Okay.
That's kind of nutty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, this is an experience because we're fixing to get ready to kind of close down the podcast a little bit, but so I went in to get some hearing checked. Mm-hmm. They don't check all your hearing; they just check some of it, the part that they think that you may have a problem with. That's what this test was for.
What?
Because I have a terrible ringing in the ears, had it for a long time. Mm-hmm. Right, and when in the military, it's a common thing. Actually, tinnitus or tinnitus, if you want to be fancy about it, affects a lot of people.
Yeah,
like it's a pretty common thing. So I went in to get a test, and what they do is they strap these electrodes to your earlobes and your head and stuff like that, and they put these things in your ears, transducers, right? Mm-hmm. And then they run different sounds and pulses and frequencies and cycles of sound to try to measure how the sound waves go through your brain and all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And it was pretty weird. And it's a lot of like clicking and popping and, you know, all this stuff. And they tell you, you know, when you go in there, right? I went in there, they put me in a chair, a nice comfortable recliner, like a barcode lounger type thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you can get all comfortable. And they're like, okay, I want you to relax because movements can throw off the recording that they're doing to see the conductance of your ears to your brain, I guess.
Okay.
So they don't want like clothes rustling and stuff like that. They don't want that in the test. They want it to be as clear. So they just, the dude's like, the lady was like, be still, you know, don't chew gum, you know, don't make a bunch of mouth noises. Just try to like meditate. I'm like, I can be asleep in 5 minutes. And she's like, this test is going to be about 15 minutes long. I'm like, that's it. I'm good. I'm going to go to sleep. Right.
Yeah.
Cause she said, if you can go to sleep, that's even better. I'm like, challenge accepted. Because military dudes, ex-military dudes, military people in general, they can sleep.
Yeah.
You sit them down long enough, they're going to go sleep. So anyway, I was in the chair, kicked back, and they started playing this stuff. And it's like, there's no patterns to it necessarily. It'll go through and it'll repeat itself 2 or 3 times and switch over to the other ear and do it 3 or 4 times. And so it does it in its own sort of cycle of the testing that it needs to do for frequencies and stuff like that. But it sort of put me I was able to put myself in a meditative state, and I was having, you know, like right before you go to sleep or like right after you wake up and then go back to sleep again real quick, you'll have like weird dreams and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Or weird, I don't want to call them visions or whatever, you know, like lucid, but not, it's lucid, but not really lucid.
Huh.
Like you're almost having a lucid dream. I was having stuff like that. So it was giving me a little bit of a weird experience, right? And I'm like, well, this is crazy. Mm-hmm. And then when I got done with the test, it continued. Like I felt it for a while. Like when you were there, when we were walking through the hospital, it just sort of put me in a different state. I'm like, that's crazy. And it's the sound that did it.
Yeah.
And so when I got home, I thought about it, and I'm like, if you look at Tesla, where he talks about sound and energy and frequency, you know, runs the universe kind of thing, and pyramids and moving blocks, and Ed Skelton, I think is his name, you know, he did Coral Castle and all that allegedly using sound and some tripod device to move these 1,000-pound coral blocks.
Yeah.
So I took a look real quick, and it, you know, I went through a couple different things, and when you get to the type of hearing loss they were checking for me, which is sensor and neural, I can't say it. Sensor and then neural hearing loss, which is the most common type. It basically says it's hearing loss that occurs when there's a problem in the way the inner ear or hearing nerve works, which is a problem I have. And I've got links to CDC talking about different types of hearing loss and where it occurs. And then I found binaural beats.
Yeah.
And what they're saying the benefits of binaural beats are. And we've actually talked about sound in the past. It was an episode we did for Patreon that you were really completely bored with, and I've never done it again. So I'm like, all right.
Well, that's because back then I had read about some binaural beat stuff and downloaded them and tried to listen to some of them, and I was just like, this is awful.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not music quality. You're not listening to it for the music. You're listening. It's the frequency at like 432 hertz.
Well, yeah.
415 hertz and all that stuff.
Because it was supposed to drop me into a focus state.
Yeah, but you're being critical of the music. That's the part where I think it led you astray. You're not there to criticize the music. You're there to just relax.
I was there to have it drop me in that focus state, and it never did.
This Wi-Fi sucks in a national park, right?
I fixated on how
terrible the music was.
I didn't like the beat changes or the noises that were being emitted. So,
yes.
Yeah, that's...
You wrecked yourself from being sonically healed.
Okay, whatever.
So, this is kind of like that, where they talk about different frequencies and stuff, but binaural beats is your brain interprets two tones, right? So say you have one at like 10 hertz and you have another one at 15 hertz. Mm-hmm. So you got 10 hertz in the left ear, 15 hertz in the right ear. Mm-hmm. Well, your brain is going to get rid of 10 hertz. So you got 10 and 15, right? So what you're left with is 5.
Okay.
So it concentrates on the 5. Does that make sense? So the 10 kind of cancels this way out. So it takes these two tones as a beat of its own. And then those two tones will align with your brain waves to produce a different beat with a different frequency. And this frequency is the difference in hertz between the frequencies of the two tones. So the difference between 10 and 15 is 5. So it basically makes 5 hertz for your brain, right? So it gives even a better example. If you're listening to a 440 hertz tone in your left ear and a 444 hertz tone in your right ear, you will then be hearing 4 hertz.
Okay.
That's the difference, right? And so when you listen to binaural beats, your brain activity matches the frequency set by the frequency of the beat. And this is called frequency following effect, which means that you can use binaural beats to entrain your mind to reach a certain mental state. And then it talks all about the superior olivary complex in binaural beats, and it's located in the brain stem, and it's part of the brain that focuses and processes sound input from both ears. And then entrainment isn't just related to binaural beats. It's a common part of the brain function. And according to some researchers, when you listen to certain binaural beats, they can increase the strength of certain brain waves. And this can increase or hold back different brain functions that control thinking and feeling. Yeah, kind of crazy, right? And so there's 5 different types of brain waves. You have the delta waves, which go from 1 to 4 hertz. And those are the lowest frequencies. And those are linked to deep sleep, healing and pain relief, meditation, anti-aging, which is like cortisol reduction, and then access to the unconscious mind. Right, we're getting into the singing bowl type stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the theta waves, which is 4 to 8 hertz, and that's talking about meditation, deep relaxation, and creativity. Alpha waves are 8 to 14 hertz, which is relaxation and focus, reduce stress, maintain positive thinking, increase your learning capabilities, and easily engage in activities because you're in the flow. And then you have beta, which is 14 to 30. That's keeping your attention focused, analytical thinking and solving problems, stimulating energy and action, and then high levels of cognition. And then gamma, which is 30 to 100 hertz. And that's increased cognitive enhancement, attention to detail, helping in memory recall, and a different way of thinking, which is a sign of creativity. So allegedly, the benefits of these binaural beats is that you can play music that matches the frequency of whatever you're trying to do, like maybe give yourself better cognitive functioning. And it'll help you get there. So you can kind of train your brain to sort of open up these pathways and stuff. And so the benefits would be like increased creativity, cognitive stuff, reduced anxiety, helping you enter a meditative state, improving sleeping habits. And now here's the side effects. Depression. It's like just depression.
Okay.
So when I was listening to this weird tones and beats in my head, it put me in a weird state. And it happened in such a random pattern that I couldn't fixate on a cycle or pattern of sound, because part of my issue is that I used to hunt and track submarines by sound. So I had to listen to certain things, and you listen for certain cyclic or repeating frequencies or tones and noises and stuff because they meant things.
Yeah.
So when I hear stuff, I'll concentrate on it.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I've been trained that way. So when I hear my ringing in my ears, that's all I freaking hear. And it's loud. So, yeah, it was just a really weird experience, right? And then there's links that we include, like how to unlock ESP with sound.
Okay.
And then I think I got a little.
Oh.
I think I put a chart in here.
Yeah, there's one where this is your brain on binaural
beats.
And I believe there's a chart in here someplace that explains like the delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, and it shows like the wave patterns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
it's the whole idea of like the whole sound thing.
I mean, I'll fixate on like a set of music. Like I don't get other people's playlists, and that's probably me. Because when I make playlists, the music has to match. It may not all be from the same artist, because even artists, when they come up with albums, the songs don't always match or flow very well.
So what you're saying is you got to have a theme?
Yeah, I have to have a constant,
a thread,
like common beat or flow in a lot of the music I put together.
Yeah.
And that's just, otherwise my brain is like, I can't focus. So... yeah.
There you go. You want some binaural beats?
No, I don't.
It's just nice, right?
No.
Feel the serotonin, the dopamine,
Okay.
endorphins, or endorphins. That's nice. So evidently on YouTube, you can get hours of this stuff. So maybe if you're having some sort of weird issues or whatever, maybe this can help. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who knows, man? Because they use sound for meditation and things like that. We've seen it in multiple countries, and it's been around for ancient times with the whole throat singing and all this other junk. Maybe it's something. I don't know how well you can recreate it using YouTube, but I'm sure you could, if you try something and try hard enough, it can work. I think you should give it a shot.
Okay.
I have the sleep pillow that makes noise.
I'll pass.
What do you call it? Sound pillow?
I'll pass.
No, that's not what it's called.
I don't know.
Yeah. You like plug in your little, is it Bluetooth? I don't remember if it's Bluetooth or no. I think it just plugs in. You can play your binaural beats. So you can.
No.
Yeah, do it wrong though. Depression. Use at your own risk, guys.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah, so speaking of China's zombie brain chips, got to put this in here since we're talking about sounds and being able to control things and using your mind for different things. Well, evidently Elon Musk has put out his brain chips.
The neural link.
And guess who's probably stolen it?
I wouldn't say that.
Why? Chinese copy everything. That's exactly what they do.
I wouldn't make
they don't care
an
about copyright
like that. So,
why would they put them both together?
China unveils their plan for chilling zombie brain chips to be implanted into skulls, and these will rival Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Are they going to rival it by being the same thing?
But can you wait 2 weeks for shipping?
It's like, yeah, exactly. Get it for less. You just go to like Wish,
Yeah.
or AliExpress or Temu. Yeah, so they've entered the race to implant brain chips into human skulls, and basically in a bid to pit against Elon Musk's Neuralink.
China has dubbed their brain-computer interface as one of its innovative, iconic products, according to the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology's press release on Monday. So, it's said the country in coming years is aiming to develop a range of brain interface products just like Neuralink's telepathy. Now,
Dun, dun, dun.
from what I understand,
They can make better citizens that way.
Neuralink's brain chip is going to connect your brain waves to an app, and that may be able to help people with neurological conditions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel weird about all of that. So
Yeah, I mean, I do too. But it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. You had people embedding RFID tags in their hands so they don't have to wave a badge at their door.
According to the South China Morning Post, the lab is already reportedly focused on turning extensive research in the field of brain chips into practical applications, meaning they are already trying to put it into people.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. Elon Musk said they've already gone and made a transplant. And then right after that, China's like, we're doing it too, and we've been doing it. Right? So it's like coincidence?
So instead of the Cold War, it's almost like the brain implant war. I don't know.
If they could have did this in the Cold War, they totally would have did this in the Cold War.
Well, I mean, like that whole, I'm saying the concept of, we have the technology. Well, we also
absolutely.
have it, that whole bluff thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
now's probably not the time to be trying to bluff each other for stuff. But I mean, yeah, it is what it is, man.
Huh.
Yeah. Last year, the Chinese government opened a 60-person laboratory focused entirely on brain-machine interfaces. And this comes from the bastion of truth, Gizmodo.
Yeah.
Which, whatever you feel about.
Experts, however, argue that China could leverage such tech implants and weaponize them to spy against their own people. So
yeah.
That's
why I said make a better citizen. Right.
Meanwhile, some critics of the technology claim the products will falsely be marketed as a remedy for all difficulties, and that interfering with the human biology with such tech implants could turn people into zombies. Now, that is an extreme statement, but I do see how it, it might be possible. So
have a little programmable frontal lobotomy action going on.
Oh, wow.
If they're going to make an actual Bluetooth version, it'd be good to have an easy way to get that in your body. So they could probably put some stuff in a vaccine. It could be controlled via Bluetooth. Think about that.
Okay.
That's a conspiracy. That was a conspiracy. There's this sort of weird metal stuff in vaccines. Yep. So they put the device under the skull, and then a small robot will connect thread-like electrodes in your brain. It's about the size of a large coin. Hope the batteries don't go dead. But you can use the Chinese battery. Remember that in our last podcast where we talked about the nuclear battery, which has really small volts?
That would create an actual...
can be good for 80 years. Maybe it's the battery is created for this brain chip thing.
But that would create an actual zombie or ghoul, because that battery is going to run for 80 and still process electronic brain activity, but you're just going to be a corpse being dragged around by this.
You ever seen their... I
brain
don't know
chip.
if it was a story. I can't remember I think maybe it was like a comic book where the dude's in a spacesuit. In the spacesuit is an automated autonomous suit, and he has to go from one side of the planet to the other.
Was it Doctor Who?
No, that was a different show. But
Okay.
those were like little bugs in books that were trying to... but this was like the spacesuit had a purpose, and the purpose was to take the suit, which is more valuable than the human in it, from one place to another. Mm-hmm. And the guy's in the suit, and he runs out of water... Right, and since he runs out of water and food, but he ran out of food, so the suit decided to go ahead and take his arm, so it can process that into fuel to keep powering the suit. Right, and it keeps going, and then the last thing that it took was his eyes. So basically, it ate him. It's just a brain in a suit, little mushy thing, so the suit could do it, and because the suit was supposed to survive at all costs. Yeah. I wish I could think of what that's called. If you've stuck through the podcast for 108 minutes and 45 seconds, and you know what I'm talking about, please let us know. It's creepy. And what I don't need, Omi, is for you to look it up and tell me before the podcast ends. Freaking podcast can be over in 4 seconds, and you're like, let me tell you. And then that way, nobody has any reason to talk to us at all.
Okay. I'm just looking.
You do this every time.
Okay.
Don't do it. So that's kind of crazy, right? Zombie brain chips. So we get some zombie brain chips from Elon Musk. We get the Chinese version. Kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Neuralink or zombie brain chip? Chinese chips. CBC. Yeah. What was that? Do appreciate you taking time to listen to Creep Geeks podcast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let us know.
You can also email us, contact@creepgeeks.com, or creepgeeks.com and click on the Contact Us form. And just going to encourage you guys again, join the Facebook group or reach out to us on social media.
Yeah. All right, one more thing. Happy birthday, Omi.
Thank you.
What's it like being 28?
I just want to call a mulligan and just be like, nope, no birthday.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
We'll see. All right, anyway, there you go. See you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
FooFighters.